In 1985, a single machine that could think cost $150,000. 2 years later, it was worthless. An entire industry, frozen solid, almost overnight. And the people who built it already had a name for what was coming. They borrowed it from the end of the world. There was a time when intelligence was for sale, and the price was staggering. In the boardrooms of the 1980s, corporations paid $150,000 for a single computer built to think. Scientists funded by the Pentagon stood before cameras and promised machines with the reasoning of a human being within a decade. For a brief, intoxicating moment, the future had arrived. And then, it vanished. Almost overnight, $500 million in value evaporated. Laboratories went dark. Companies that had been worth fortunes filed for bankruptcy. And the phrase artificial intelligence became so toxic, so synonymous with broken promises, that serious engineers refused to speak it aloud, hiding their work behind safer names just to survive. This is the story of how the dream of thinking machines collapsed, not once, but twice, into a long, brutal season the pioneers themselves would name a winter. To understand the fall, we must return to the height of the Cold War, when artificial intelligence was not an academic curiosity, but an instrument of national survival. In 1954, in a laboratory in New York, an IBM computer performed what seemed like a miracle. It translated more than 60 sentences from Russian into English. The demonstration, organized with Georgetown University, electrified the United States government. Leon Dostert, the linguist behind it, predicted that machine translation would be a solved problem within 3 to 5 years. Washington listened. Drowning in intercepted Russian documents and desperate to read the mind of its rival, the state opened a river of funding. Agencies like DARPA poured tens of millions of dollars into the new science, intoxicated by the optimism of pioneers who swore that a machine with human intelligence was just one generation away. For the first time, the ancient dream of mechanized thought had a sponsor with the deepest pockets on Earth, and an appetite for results that no laboratory could yet satisfy. But the river of money came with a price: scrutiny. By the mid-1960s, governments began to ask a dangerous question: what exactly had all that funding bought? In 1966, after an investment of some $20 million, an American advisory committee delivered a verdict on machine translation that landed like a blade. State-funded translation, it found, was slower, more expensive, and less accurate than a human being with a dictionary. Careers ended. Federal funding for the field stopped. Across the Atlantic, the reckoning was even sharper. In 1973, the mathematician Sir James Lighthill handed the British government a report that surveyed the whole of artificial intelligence and found it wanting. In no part of the field, he wrote, had the discoveries produced the major impact that had been promised. Lighthill diagnosed the disease precisely: the combinatorial explosion. Symbolic logic worked beautifully on tidy puzzles, but when it faced the messy, branching infinity of the real world, the number of possibilities exploded beyond any machine's reach. Britain froze nearly all undirected AI research. DARPA slashed its budgets. And the field fell into a 6-year drought, the first winter. Yet ambition does not die easily. It adapts. Chastened by the failure to build a general mind, the researchers of the 1980s made a strategic retreat into the narrow and the practical. If a machine could not know everything, perhaps it could become an expert in one small thing. They called these systems exactly that: expert systems, software that captured the knowledge of a human specialist inside a dense web of if-then rules. The lineage began at Stanford with Dendril, born in 1964 under Edward Feigenbaum and Joshua Lederberg, a program that could identify unknown molecules from the data of a mass spectrometer. From it grew Mycin, built from roughly 200 rules to diagnose bacterial infections of the blood and recommend antibiotics. And, remarkably, it reasoned under uncertainty, attaching to each conclusion a measure of confidence. The commercial world took notice. When the Digital Equipment Corporation deployed a system called XCON to configure its computers, it saved the company millions. Suddenly, artificial intelligence was not a broken promise, but a booming business. An industry that, by the close of the decade, would be valued at $1 billion. This new industry needed a temple, and it built one out of silicon, because expert systems were written overwhelmingly in Lisp, the favored language of artificial intelligence. A generation of companies arose to manufacture computers optimized to run nothing else. They were called Lisp machines, and they were marvels of engineering, hand-tuned cathedrals of hardware sold by firms like Symbolics and Lisp Machines Incorporated. They were also extraordinarily expensive, with price tags that ran from $70,000 to $150,000 apiece. To the believers, the cost was justified. These were the specialized instruments of the coming age of thinking machines, as essential to AI as a particle accelerator was to physics. Corporations and laboratories bought them by the thousands, certain that the future would be written in Lisp, on hardware built for nothing else. It was a magnificent, towering bet, and it rested entirely on the assumption that ordinary computers would never be powerful enough to do the same work for less.
The bet was lost in the span of a single year. The trouble came from every direction at once. Across the Pacific, Japan had launched a colossal $400 million program to build logic supercomputers, a national gamble that ended in obsolescence and failure, taking its optimism down with it. In America, DARPA's $100 million Strategic Computing Initiative chased machines that could see and reason, and came up empty. But the deepest wounds were self-inflicted. The expert systems proved brittle. Flawless in a sterile demonstration, they shattered at the first unexpected input, and keeping them current was a nightmare. The legendary XCon eventually required a permanent squad of 59 specialists just to maintain its tangle of rules. And then came the killing blow, delivered by an ordinary law of progress. By 1987, Moore's law had made standard desktop computers powerful enough to run Lisp themselves. Why buy a $100,000 machine when a $5,000 desktop could do the same work? The answer was that no one would. The market for specialized AI hardware collapsed overnight, destroying $500 million in value. Symbolics and its rivals fell into bankruptcy, and a chastened DARPA cut the field to the bone. The most haunting part of the story is that someone saw it coming.
3 years before the collapse, at the 1984 meeting of the American Association of Artificial Intelligence, two of the field's own elders, Roger Schenck and Marvin Minsky, rose to issue a warning. The enthusiasm, they said, had spiraled out of control, and a chain reaction was coming. Unmet expectations, then budget cuts, then the total paralysis of serious research. To make the danger unforgettable, they reached for the most apocalyptic image of their age and gave the coming collapse its name. They called it an AI winter, invoking the nuclear winter that haunted the Cold War imagination. The audience, fat on the profits of the expert system boom, ignored them completely. 3 years later, the prophecy came true to the letter. The aftermath was so severe that the very phrase artificial intelligence became a mark of charlatanism. To keep their careers and their funding, a new generation of researchers buried the term, working in the shadows under sober new names: machine learning, knowledge-based systems, intelligent agents, computational intelligence. The dream did not die. It went into hiding, waiting for two unlikely saviors that no one in that room could have predicted.